Hi, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of the action research project that you are embarking on. So this is just kind of a big picture view to give you a sense of where you're headed. Uh, so the process that we're going to go through is identifying a focus, conducting a literature review, so seeing what's already out there, crafting an intervention, so that's kind of the heart of your process, collecting data and a plan for data collection, and then analysis. So I'll talk about those in a little bit more detail in a little bit. But first, I want to give you a few hints. So first of all, a successful project, I think, can be defined in a few ways. Most importantly, it's something that's meaningful to you. Um, the other thing is it needs to include measures of student learning, so it has to go beyond measuring attitudes and perceptions. So we don't want a project that just focuses on, do your students like this, or do your students have a better attitude? Those are things that you can collect data on and are valuable, but we also want to make sure that you um, are looking at some way to make sure or to measure student learning. Um, for this project, it must have a connection to science. When we talk about the intervention, we'll talk quite a bit about that. It needs to be focused and clean. So if your project involves all kinds of moving pieces and you're trying a whole bunch of different strategies and different things, it really gets hard to tell um, um, what's having an impact. So this isn't a classic experiment, but you can sort of think about it in terms of that way. You want to limit the number of variables and the number of things that you're changing so that you can find out what the impact is. And then also something that you need to keep in mind with your project is it needs to be something that can be completed. So you want something to be meaningful, but also you need to recognize that this isn't your life work. It's a project that's going to help you improve your teaching, and completing it will give you some insight into teaching that involves a continual improvement process. So you want to make sure that you can actually complete the project that you're going to do. Um, One other suggestion, I think it's important for you to start collecting copies of assessments that you're using this year. So maybe chapter tests that you're giving, unit tests that you're giving, if you have key projects or key homework assignments that you can keep some samples of. All of that kind of data, you may end up not using it, but you may find out as you're crafting your data collection strategy that you can use this year's students as a comparison for what you're doing next year. Um, and if you decide, next fall that you want to do that, it's too late to go back and collect those assessments. So you might as well keep track of those now and have them just in case you might want to use them. All right, so just a couple of things about the project to go a little bit more detail about um, the different parts. So first of all, your focus, you want it to be narrow but meaningful. You don't have a large time frame that you're going to be doing this in, so you want it really focused. Um, your lit review, when we talk about a literature review, what that is you look into the published research literature. So what have other people written about the area that you're focused on? Um, I think it's important, and we'll talk more about this when we get into the literature review. Is you can include some kind of theoretical and opinion pieces, but we also want you to dig into the research literature and projects that have been done where they've collected data and the projects have been peer reviewed and those types of things. So then we get to the intervention, which we'll focus a little bit on this spring, but really dig into that next fall. So the intervention is kind of that new thing that you're going to try. Um, what change are you going to be making to your teaching? Data collection. So from a data collection, it's what are your research questions? So what questions do you want to answer, and how are you going to collect evidence of this? And then finally, the last stage, analysis. Once you have that evidence, crafting an argument for what your intervention was. So I want to just give a quick example, and we'll pull something from a comment on the discussion board. So a potential focus could be something along the lines of engagement, and the quote from the discussion board was more them discussing, less me talking. So a first step is, if I'm interested in better classroom discussions, the first step is to conduct a literature review to see what's out there. So what are others thinking about this? What research has been done on facilitating good classroom discussions? How do you encourage student crosstalk so that it's not just the teacher talking and a student answering a question once in a while, but you actually have students talking to each other. So what's out there on how to do that? After you have a good sense of what's out there and what the research literature says about discussions, then you can start thinking about your intervention. So from the lit review, I found that there was a variety of strategies, perhaps things called discussion moves or specific discussion protocols like Socratic dialogue or Socratic circles that'll help students really start engaging in academic conversations. So I'm going to implement a few of these specific strategies in my class. Uh, the Then the next piece is once I know what my intervention is, I need to start thinking about how am I going to collect data, what research questions. I do know that I want to have a focus on student learning, so one of my first questions is going to be how do these strategies impact student content learning, and I may measure this through a pre and post test and compare those scores to a comparison group that I didn't use these strategies with. Um, I also want to know how the discussion patterns changed as a result of these strategies. So if my goal was to have students talking to each other um, instead of it being less driven by me, I'm going to want to put away through maybe through observation to keep track of are students talking to each other more as a result of these strategies. And then finally, what do students think? Do they find that the strategies useful? Did they enjoy the discussions? Those types of things. What are their perceptions about the strategies? So once I have that plan, I do my intervention, I collect data, and I get to the analysis piece. So, um, what is my data? What does my data show? And I think it's important here to think. We're not in a place where we're going to be able to prove anything. This is practitioner research. So you're involved in this research. You're going to have a small sample size. So what your goal is to craft an evidence-based argument to show the impact of your intervention. The other thing is this is for you. So the results and your analysis also are going to provide you insight into what worked and what didn't work, which will allow you to kind of continue along on that improvement process. So one of the things that I want to end with, or the big thing that I want to end with, is don't stress out too much about the big picture. So that I wanted you to see where you're headed with this whole process, but over the next 18 months or so, we're going to be taking this one piece at a time. So we're starting this first few weeks with identifying a focus. Um, After that, we'll dig into a lit review. Then we'll go on to kind of outlining what an intervention is and kind of go through those step by step. So don't stress too much over the end product. Instead, worry about what your next task or your next assignment is. But as you're doing those assignments, kind of think about your employment in your teaching situation. So, um, if you're not in a classroom, your project is going to look very different, and we can talk about what that'll look like. If your job isn't particularly stable, so you're not sure if you're going to be in the same grade level or the same classroom next year as you are right now, you want to think about a focus area that's flexible. So, if you're a physics teacher this year, but you might be moved to a different school and be teaching middle school next year, you probably wouldn't want to focus on an intervention that's very clearly focused on teaching the universal law of gravitation, for example. Instead, you might look at something more like the example we use of discussion, which even if you switch grade levels, you can still use the elements of that project in your new classroom. So think about what your context of your teaching situation is, and then last, there's a bunch of us that are working together on this. I'm here to help you through all these steps, and it'll be a pretty collaborative and collegial process all the way through to the end, to the end of your project.